Hey, this is Max from Akashlytics. In this video, we'll be deploying a Next.js app from scratch to the Akash Network, aka the D Cloud. So to get started, first we need to have, the prerequisites. We need to have an Akash wallet with at least 5 AKT in it, Docker installed on your computer, and of course, for the Next.js app, you'll need to have Node.js and Yarn installed. So this is the kind of the end result of what you'll be deploying today. It's simply a Next.js app that I did just as an example for people to inspire themselves or just have an example around. So but today we'll be deploying a very simple app from scratch, uh, straight from the Next.js repository. They have examples there, and they even have one for Docker. So it's super simple. If you want to migrate your existing website or web app to Docker and then deploy it on Akash, it's super easy. We'll go over all the steps to do it. So first, we'll initiate our project with this command, which will basically just scaffold the project. And with the command line, you can just go ahead and paste that. And what this will do is we'll create a project, get the dependencies, and just have a starting project that you can just start from if you want to build a new web app or just migrate your existing web app. So what we're going to do is change repository, change directory, and open that folder with VS Code. And if we open the package.json, we can see that we have a npm package or npm scripts that we can run just to see that the app is running correctly. So we can do run npm run dev, and then we'll have a web server listening on localhost. So if I open that, there you go. We have our Next.js app running on localhost port 3000. And just as an example, I guess we can just edit something inside the app, add some text, just see if it works. It should. Yes, it does. So now that we have a Next.js app, what we want to do is build the Docker image, and eventually after that, deploy the container on the Akash network. So fairly simple. We have all the files that we need from that example. We open the Docker file. This is the file that we need to be able to build the Docker container image. So you don't need to change anything. It's gonna work out of the box. So we don't need to stop the web server. And the command to build your Docker image is Docker build with a dot to mention that everything under the current folder, and with a tag, I'm gonna call it Backtoon is my username, personal username on Docker Hub. Hello Akash Next.js, that's what I'm gonna call it. Version 0.0.1 because it's the first version of our app. And this is gonna build the image locally with all the dependencies, basically running all the scripts that is in the Docker file. And now it's done. So I mentioned Docker Hub. Basically, what we are going to do after building the image. Now that the image is built, we're going to push it to our repository. Right now, we're going to use Docker Hub. You can create an account. It's free and fairly simple to use. So we have our Docker image. If we open Docker, as you can see, less than a minute ago, we have our image locally. We can run it just to make sure that it's running properly. Can do that with the command line or with the user interface. Docker run port 3000, math on port 3000, and which image? The image that we just built. Hello, Akash Next.js tag 0.0.1. So now if I go back to the browser, boom. So it works on Docker. So basically, that just means that if we deploy on Akash, there's no reason why it wouldn't work, except like some parameters missing. And we have our modification that we did. So what we are going to do now is first we're going to stop the container. Can delete this one, stop this one, can delete it as well. And yeah, so we need to push that image to the repository. So command is docker push and the name of the image, hello Akash Next.js tag 0.0.1. And since I already authenticated with my account, it knows that it's going to push it to my account repository. So if I go back on Docker Hub, refresh, there it is, pushed a few seconds ago. So now that the image is on the repository, it's available on the internet. So it will be available for Akash providers to download it when we deploy on the Akash network. So this is what we'll be doing next. We have a deployment already for the Hello Akash world, just as an example. So we'll create a new deployment, and we can use this one as a template to deploy our new Next.js app. There's a lot of text here, but the idea is to have a bit of documentation. Usually, you don't need all the green text. It's just documentation to explain how the format of the file works. The name of this file is an SDL. It stands for Stack Definition Language. It's kind of like a Docker Compose file. All the documentation is under docs.akash.network if you want to have all the details. But basically here under services, we specify which services we want to deploy. And this is the name of our service. In that case, we can leave it as web. And under the image here, we specify the image, the Docker container image we want to pull and deploy. In our case, it's backtoon slash hello Akash Next.js. And it's important here to specify the exact tag number because Akash doesn't support the latest tag yet. And here you can play with the ports. Right now it's mapped from 3000 to port 80, which is what we need currently. And under the profiles compute property, we can specify which amount of resources that we want. So right now 0.5 CPU 512 megabyte for memory and storage is well enough for our little Next.js app. And the rest of the SDL, you can look into the documentation to know exactly what it does. So we can name that deployment just hello Akash Next.js. So we'll go and create deployment. This is the escrow account. That's why we need at least 5 AKT. It's just a mechanism for Akash to pay for the deployment on your, well, just for you to pay every block. And then once you're done with your deployment, let's say I just cancel it an hour after, you get the 5 AKT back minus what it costed to run it for an hour. So you're not gonna lose your 5 AKT. So deposit, approve. So just as a reminder for new users, Akash is a blockchain. So this was a blockchain transaction that we did, because everything is on chain and it takes about 6 seconds per block. So that's why it took a bit of time. And as you can see, we have some bids here from providers on the network, super cheap, 77 cents per month to host our Next.js app. And I usually pick providers that are audited. This little shield here represents the audited attributes. Currently, this provider is audited by the Akash Network itself, so it's safe to use it. Accept bid. Now it's going to create a lease with that provider for our Docker container. And again, this is a blockchain transaction. Done. Transaction succeed. And then it's going to send the manifest or the SDL to that provider, so it knows the instructions of what to do for you. So in that case, as you can see, this is the Kubernetes events. It pulled our image from the Docker Hub repository and created the pod successfully. So if I go to the logs, as you can see, it's listening on port 3000. If I go back on leases, this is our lease and how much it costs, how many resources you leased, and here we have the URI of our Next.js app that is deployed on the DWeb. So there you go. We have a running website on the Akash network on a provider somewhere, and it's super fast, easy to do. So I hope you found that useful. Thank you for watching. For a bonus, I guess we can do quickly an update. So let's say I wanted to update our app here, add some stuff, change the layout, something like that. Can go back on our project here, and let's do just a random modification. Remove Docker on the Akash network, and that's a small modification, but just as a guide to update your deployment. Now what we need to do is the same. We need to build the new container version and push it again to the Docker Hub repository. So we can just go up a few commands, build, change the tag to 0.0.2, build, takes a few seconds to do. Wait, okay, done, boom. And then we can push that new tag to the repository. Should take a few seconds again. There you go. And then we can go back to our deployment here. Under the update tag, we can change the tag of our image to 0.0.2. And if I go on Docker Hub, Right now, we only have the 0.0.1 tag. If I refresh, you can see that it successfully got pushed to the repository. And then here we can update the deployment, another transaction, and it's gonna send again the manifest back to the provider, telling the provider that it needs to update the image, and then should be good to go. There you go. It's pulling the image, and that's basically what we do for Akashlytics.com. It's a little bit more complex setup, but it's the same concept. So if I go back to our app, you should see that this phrase or this part of the text changed when I refresh. There you go. So that's how we do it. Super simple. And if you're done with your deployment, you can close it, and then I'll receive back the 5 AKT minus what it costed to run it back on my balance. There you go. Thank you for watching.